Hello, and welcome to The Confident Commit, the podcast for anyone who wants to join the conversation on how to deliver software better and faster.
If you're looking to build a trusted ship, tune in, let's confidently commit.
I'm your host, Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI, industry leader for all things CI and CD. Today, I'm joined by Corey Latislaw, head of engineering at Trainline. Corey, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about chatting today.
Yeah, I am. I'm super excited. I recently had the chance to see you. God, let's speak about. You're the third person for a second to see Corey speak at LDX3 in London. I mean, we've run into each other many times at many different conferences, but on the topic of creativity. I'm so fascinated by this because I think people, as part of what you address, people have this really bizarre perception of creativity, but we actually all need a little bit more of it and sort of like finding it and bringing it out in ourselves, to do our jobs effectively. And I think that, anyway, I just think it's such an exciting topic, and I think you do a great job of sort of thinking about it and reasoning about it. And so I'm excited to get straight into it. So, I guess, as I said, I feel like we all need a little bit more of it. I think engineering in particular is a very creative discipline, right? Like we're solving problems. We're trying to find new and novel ways to solve problems. But a lot of people don't think of themselves as creative. Like there's something about that term when you apply it, it's like, oh, I don't, I'm not artistic, or I don't have these, I don't have that creative bone or whatever. How do you think about helping people, and how do you help people kind of see past that and connect with their inner creativity?
Yeah, it's a great point. A lot of times people get kind of, I guess it feels a bit too fuzzy to call themselves creative. So in my talk, I kind of go through multiple ways to show them that they are actually much more creative than they give themselves credit for. So in engineering, if you think about when you're solving a problem, like you mentioned, we are solving it quite creatively. We're trying to build an entire mental model around how everything works. We're trying to look at prior research and figure out how things are working. We try and figure out, what sort of refactors and tests we want to write and all that sort of stuff. And then ultimately we come up with a solution. But there's a lot of small moments of creativity throughout all of that. And then also the solution at the end tends to be quite creative. And if you think about what creativity really is at its core, it's just connecting things. There's a great quote by Steve Jobs. Don't have it to hand, but essentially it's creativity is just connecting things. So the idea is creative people often feel a little bit guilty whenever they have been creative, because they just saw something and they kind of made a new connection there that other people weren't able to create, to make in the same way.
So is that like I don't know if this is a useful metaphor, but like, is it a muscle that you exercise, right? Like that ability, I think many of us, unfortunately, end up, even when we believe we have a very sort of open mindset, like we can learn new things, kind of like we end up with closed mindsets about certain things. That's a trait that people have or don't have. Is creativity sort of a tool in your toolkit that you need to like build and work on like everything else? Are there sort of ways or approaches that people can use to sort of build that skill of connecting things?
Yeah, a lot of times people are very closed-minded about art and creativity, and they tend to conflate these two things as the same thing. And creativity is, like I mentioned before, already a mindset. It's not about art. Now, artists do use creativity to create their outputs, which is the art itself. But there's lots of moments of creativity that lead to that point. So it is one of those things that you can practice. And I found actually that, and this is true of pretty much anything that you learn. So with neuroplasticity, the idea is if you learn something new and then you continue to practice, those pathways get stronger with use. So the same thing is true with creativity. And I've also found that it's jumped to other areas of my life. And I find creativity showing up in my leadership and in my programming back when I was a programmer. And it's not just more creativity in my artistic side projects. It's also creativity in everything from parenting to leading.
So I mean, in terms of developing it, right? Like, I feel like the advice "be more creative" is probably not super helpful. I mean, I'm trying to imagine things that I do that I like breaking things down into smaller. If you were trying to learn a new skill like a sport, you would break it down into the components, and then you would work on those components, right? Like you would practice those components. And I'm like, is doing Wordle in the morning, like, does that help me see things and connect things? Like, what kinds of if I'm sort of a developing, oh gosh, what a terrible word. I'm a young, early in my career software developer, and I want to learn and build my creativity. I mean, I can just keep doing the job, but are there other things, like other practices that would help me kind of build my creativity? And specifically, again, that idea of like connecting things, right? Like seeing patterns, which I think is a big part of, building effective systems, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways that you could practice it. So for me, that's been art. And I have a journal that I carry around with me. And I just constantly practice, usually with a pen. Like the baseline is just a really cheap, thin paper with a pen I really like. And that makes it more approachable and easy to take everywhere with me. So I'm able to practice it even in small, stolen moments. But it doesn't have to be art. It doesn't have to be things that you would traditionally call creative. It could be, I know there's a lot of musicians in the engineering space that I've ran into. So you're definitely creative in the space of music. You can be creative with cooking. So for example, making a focaccia and putting onion flowers and things on that, you could be creative with that. It's any time that you go above and beyond the brief or the bare minimum that you would need to do a task. That's when the creativity starts to show up. Oh
yeah. I love that idea. I mean, literally anywhere, right? Stepping outside of, I guess, well, you called it the brief, which is so funny because I'm thinking of product briefs as you say that. Yeah,
because I took an illustration class, and basically they would give you a creative brief to work on every week. Yeah. So that's kind of where I stole that idea from. But there's definitely an analog there with a lot of the creativity that goes into the product space and determining what we're going to build.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. But that exact point, like anywhere in your life, and now I'm like listing all the things in my head where I kind of don't want people to be creative, but I'll spare them. But that notion that like in anything that you do, in any hobby, activity, whatever it is, like it doesn't have to be drills, right? Like that's kind of where my head went, with the sports analogy. But there's always an opportunity to do something a little bigger, a little different. I'm going to take this thing and build on it and try to like derive things from it, like make a new version of it, whatever that might be. And all of those are opportunities, I think, to start to expand the way that you look at things and the way that you think about things, right? Like I think there's a huge amount of that in engineering. Right. Yes, someone has built something like this before. And if that part, like if we're just doing exactly what someone else has done, please, let's just do that or take someone else's, because that's not really where the value is. But as soon as we step past that and we're trying to build something new and novel for our customers, solve a new novel problem, the ability to take a bunch of existing components and do something new with them is really where we start to add value. And I think taking that framing and applying it kind of, anywhere is, I think is a great practice. So now we keep talking about, creativity is not art per se, right? Those are different things. Yes, artists use creativity, but you definitely take it to like the next level. I mean, I've seen your sketch notes and your zines and your stickers and like all these side projects that you do. How do those, for you, I mean, we talked a little bit about doing things outside that grow your creativity. How do those influence both your creativity kind of in your work and how you think about, leadership and sort of growing other people?
Yeah, this is a huge topic. So how I kind of ended up there is I was dabbling in a lot of different arts and crafts stuff and up through my 20s, and I fell in love with photography for like 8 years. But then I found sketchnoting about 2015. It was like the perfect blend between creative and analytical. And then I did that for a while. And then that got me interested in learning how to draw better. And then that got me interested in tons of other mediums. And I've kind of spiraled out, like you mentioned, from there. So I do zines, a lot of digital art, but also a lot of physical art. one of the things that you need to do a lot of as a leader and a software engineer is communicate with others and make the things that you're creating accessible and understandable to others as well. So I've always loved a diagram. So even early on in my career, when I was a programmer, I was, anytime I get stuck on a problem, I'd pull out my colorful pens and a whiteboard or a big piece of paper and try and map out what was happening so I could find the areas where it was broken so then I could move forward instead of feeling blocked. Now through systems thinking and adapting lots of different models, because there's loads out there that you can use mental models, I like to take those as a base and kind of expand them for whatever problem I'm trying to solve. Like you could do everything from mapping out how a business makes money and find those areas of value that you can add, mapping out the different strategic relationships you need to build. You could bring creativity to your coaching as well. So like the types of questions you're asking. There's even, more academic creative exercises like having a conversation with the chair and you kind of move back and forth between the two chairs to talk through something. Or maybe you give them coaching cards, which have images on it, which then would kind of unlock something more from their subconscious and help them move past the blockage they've got there. And even with something like the GROW model, which is a very straightforward coaching model where you ask about the goal and the reality of right now and then push them to be creative to come up with options. I took that model and then created a Miro board from that. So then they had a thing that they could take away and then use to basically build a backlog of the types of things they wanted to focus on. So it shows up in many, many ways across my leadership. So it's everything from communicating and adapting my communications to people I interact with, to building innovation cultures, and strategic problem solving, both at a local level and at a scaled level as well. And like that really intersects with the systems thinking and trying to model and diagram out things to understand all the moving parts.
Wow. There are like two totally different tracks in there that I want to pursue. And maybe I'll come back to the second one after I mention the first one. But one was really all the visual diagramming, communication, like all the things that we constantly say are important in engineering and then often are not great at. The other was a coaching piece. So I'll try to come back to the coaching piece. But I think that you really called out and established something really valuable in there. And interestingly, like, it's funny because I have seen your art and it's excellent. And I also draw lots of things with colored pens and they're terrible, but they still provide a huge amount of value, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. In that when I'm trying to communicate with someone, often I just use Excalidraw, which like feels hand drawn, but shout out to that tool because it's really easy to use. Putting things on paper, quote unquote, whether it's real paper, physical paper, or like, some visual representation of what it is that we're talking about, I think is a hugely valuable and underutilized piece of communications, right? We write a lot of words or we talk a lot about the thing that we're trying to do. And, picture really is worth 1,000 words in these cases. And I guess again, I'm trying to do everyone a favor and to let them know that you can have crappy drawings like mine, where people can barely read your handwriting and the boxes are definitely not boxes, but they approximate maybe 4 lines in a general area. And that still communicates a huge amount that just can't be conveyed with words. And to your, you also raised systems thinking in there, like putting those pieces together and seeing the whole thing, like the amount of, I think, recognition, realization that happens once people can look at it and go, oh, that's how it works, or that's what you're trying to do, right? Like that, I just don't think we do enough of it. And
yeah, 100%. So when I was doing sketchnoting, there's a book by the dude who coined the term. That's basically the concept is ideas, not art. So it doesn't have to be beautiful, like you're saying. It's really about communicating that concept. And boxes, well, close enough to boxes, really do help. And one of the tools we haven't really talked about is like digital whiteboarding tools. And I basically feel like I live in Miro these days because even today I was trying to do some org design stuff and figure out how I want to organize the teams and who should be managing what and stuff. But the brief is you've got a bunch of stickies and maybe some lines connecting people, but I've got nice little boxes around the teams that have a team color and things like that. So like you can even bring creativity to the quite functional things as well, to really help make it easier to understand what's going on. Because then for example, the team colors, while they're pretty, the whole point really is like, this is a logical grouping. And then you can see that logical grouping from just a quick glance. You're like, oh, that team's doing one thing, that one's doing another. And there's a whole, tons of design and information theory and all sorts of stuff that you could study to help organize those thoughts. But just putting pen to paper, digital or not, really does help not only crystallize your thinking, but it helps you to connect with others. And like you said, like get feedback on, oh, wait, that's not what I was thinking at all. Or maybe you are really aligned and great. Then that diagram is just then useful. Now it's part of the wiki or whatever. Yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that about teams. I was reminded of someone else in a different conversation asking me, does your HRIS, like your HR information system, right?
Are there any good ones? Because I haven't found a good one.
I'll reserve comment. I'm not familiar with any that I would call great. But they were asking if I use that to do sort of org design and communicate org. And I was like, no. And they said, right, you do it in a spreadsheet, right? I was like, no, I do it in Excalidraw. And they were like, it was this really funny moment for them. And I was like, to me, it's all this visual layout, right? And it's the colors, right? Like this team is grouped together and these teams fit together over here. And it's the old, and I just don't feel like, that the tools are designed for that. And at the end of the day, there's so much that you can get with a drawing, right? And like, and often engineering is not about orgs, but often it is, right? I mean, that's what Conway's Law keeps teaching us over and over, right? And so, how we design the system and how we design the organization to support the system, et cetera, like those things are intertwined. And again, the ability to sort of like communicate, convey that is super powerful. And I was actually, you mentioned digital whiteboarding, and I feel like so many tools have come and gone in that space because as humans, we cling to our metaphors too much. Do you know what I mean? And like, if you give me a digital marker and force me to draw my horrible boxes, right, one line at a time, I'm going to really struggle. And like my magic trackpad, whatever I use, like it's not that great for that. But it's a digital tool. Just let me like grab a box off a palette and throw it on there. And like the ability to quickly share and communicate ideas, especially in a very hybrid remote world, is super valuable. And so, you mentioned Miro. I'm assuming, I mean, again, I know you're good at drawing boxes, but like you just grab a box and throw it on there and grab another one and throw it on there. Like we don't have to have it be a marker. We use markers because that's the tool we have when we're all standing around a whiteboard, right? But I think that like finding a tool that you're really proficient with, again, I'll keep citing Excalidraw because it's just really simple. That's what I happen to use is, okay, I can type here, Like if you give me a digital marker and ask me to write what the box is, no one will ever know what that box is. But, let me type it. It's fine. And I do think like, collaborating over drawings in that way is a super, super valuable tool that I think gets underutilized because people built sort of like digital versions of the thing we do in real life. And that sort of stopped people.
Yeah, it's all stickies and stuff, right? So like bringing those and the metaphors into the tool. And I find that like, it is pretty much just drag and dropping most of the things I create, but having an iPad is really helpful for that too. So I haven't used the tool you're mentioning, but like I have a Remarkable. I use this tool a lot as well. I don't love PowerPoint, so I'm trying to avoid doing that as much as possible these days, but I am at a Microsoft shop at the moment.
Well, I find that I just draw in other tools and then paste the images that I've drawn onto slides kind of thing. Like the slide is basically the brand around the edge. And then my drawing in the middle. I did want to come back to this coaching thing because I think that's really interesting. In that you mentioned a lot of coaching tools, and I think a lot of people associate, because this is what we do. We talked about grouping things in boxes, right? Coaching tools are things that coaches have, right? As opposed to coaching tools are things that are really valuable for leaders who are trying to, a lot of what we do is coach and mentor and grow people working for us. So you mentioned a couple sort of like on a flyby, but are there any in particular that have been really valuable to you, in your leadership role as you look to grow the folks underneath you? And you talked about getting them past their roadblocks, et cetera.
Yeah, so I did executive coaching training last year. So I spent 6 months in an intensive program studying all different types of coaching models that exist out there and different tools and different approaches that you can bring when you're coaching someone. And I find it really interesting when coaching engineers because I think they want answers from you. So the whole idea of coaching is you're not in the business of answers, you're in the business of questions. A mentor can help you with answering your questions. But a lot of engineers kind of come with a question and they want you to give an answer. And they get deeply uncomfortable if you just hold the silence and then ask them a question back. It's like, oh, well, how would you get to the next level? And wait. But yeah, so in those moments, well, one, I have to remind myself not to be the nervous I basically fill negative spaces in talking quite easily. So I have to like sit on my hands and wait a few seconds. But some of the things that are really useful in the coaching space. So I mentioned the GROW model. So I used that for quite a long time. And now since I went through that program, I needed to build my own coaching model. So I blended that with agile software delivery methodologies and then thought about this other model that's called Oscar. That's a little bit more about thinking about the resources that you have and the other people who know how to do this well and looking to them and trying to steal ideas from them that you can do to unblock yourself. So I find those two are really valuable in helping people get from a block state, because often people might come to you over and over again with the same problem. And unless you're trying to get them to come up with new ideas, they're going to still continue to bring that problem to you and try to push it up to you to solve instead of you empowering them by putting it back in their hands. But if you just say, well, I don't know, sort it out yourself, that's not as helpful to people. So if you start engaging with, okay, well, why don't we brainstorm together around what you might do differently, then you can kind of shift that a bit. I mentioned coaching cards. So you can either build your own through any of the online free image collector places if you wanted to, or you can buy coaching cards. But the idea is you could lay them out on a table and ask them to pick up the ones that appeal to them. And then for whatever reason, they end up picking the one that is like probably the biggest blocker or thing on their mind. So it can really unlock because it's accessing a different part instead of the analytical, I'm frozen and I don't know what to do. It's more like, oh, here's, something that's a little bit more flowy that they kind of like slip into. So I found that to be really effective as well. And I have done the conversation, between two chairs before. And yeah, it can be really emotional and really powerful for people because a lot of times people are feeling like they just can't have a hard conversation with somebody. And then you just give them the permission to say all the things that they want to say. Sometimes then they don't want to go say it to the person, or sometimes it really helps them organize their thoughts. So then they can go and do it in a more productive way instead of, from whatever emotion they were feeling. Yeah,
there's a lot in there, all of which seem very valuable. And I really think, you mentioned that you were, I think you were doing some coaching. You did this executive coaching course, but I think people have this association, like that's a thing that you do if you want to be an executive coach. Not those are a bunch of tools that would be really valuable to me as a manager and a leader and whatever. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Hopefully people can go, find those resources. We'll try to put some in the notes. Also, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Because, it's 2025. And if we don't talk about AI, then we've failed everybody.
Yeah.
But in this context, do you feel like, AI assistance, AI assisted coding, whatever it is, like however people are using these tools these days, do you feel like it's stifling or enhancing people's creativity?
Yeah, I think it's a nuanced conversation for sure. I do use it in different ways. So I think sometimes it can stifle your creativity and sometimes I think it can enhance your creativity. If you think about it more as a thought partner that you're going to work with to help refine your ideas instead of just you give them an image description, they spit it out and you're done. That's where it stifles creativity, I think, if you're just looking for it to be an answer machine, but if you're looking for it to help deepen your own thoughts. So if you think about coaching, part of why it's so valuable, and we're familiar with this from a rubber duck sort of perspective, but like one of the things they talk about in coaching is like, it's just as valuable for someone to talk to a lamppost. Like it's valuable for someone to talk to a lamppost, period. Because then they're at least verbalizing the things that are going on for them. Right. But at least you can ask them questions and stuff. So it really does help people refine their ideas. So one of the things I do with ChatGPT or whatever is ask it to interview me. So I'll give it the brief, I'll give it a role, I'll give it the output I'm trying to look towards, and I ask it to ask me questions before it starts to start helping me solutionize. So that's in the leadership space. I use that a fair amount. In the creative side, I do use AI tools to help me design some of my illustrations, especially sketch notes, because those are really quite quick. And before I was using Google Images to find a reference image. Now I'm just finding a reference image to there, but I'm able to be much more specific in the types of things I want to build from it. And then in the coding space, like I spent 12 years as a developer. I don't tend to code as much during the day job because there's just so many other things to do. But I've been getting into vibe coding recently. So there's definitely some gatekeepers around here where you can't build real things, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's very useful for me. Even back 2 years ago, I was using ChatGPT as a pair programming partner over Christmas. I just wanted to build a Swift app because I'd never built a Swift app, and it helped me get much farther than I would have been able to on my own. But I also do have a computer science degree and foundation there. So I knew the types of questions to ask. I knew when to call BS on where it was taking me. And then more recently, I've been using like Firebase Studio to vibe code. Basically, I'm trying to create a font creator. So give it a description of a font I want, and then it'll give me an image. And then the part that's breaking is then, okay, cool, now create me a font that I can install on my computer and use in a project. So that's the one I've been working on most recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. You can go either way. It's interesting that, and unsurprising that your answer was very similar to your take on coaching, right? Like, I'm not here to provide answers. And so as long as you treat your, AI, whatever, I don't know, thing, your partner as a partner, I definitely have gotten unblocked or into new territory that I wouldn't have gotten myself into, like in a positive way, because I just didn't have the tool at hand or the understanding of a particular, approach or capability, and then got into that new space and then was able to be creative in that space, kind of thing, right? Like getting past those blockers, if that's how you think about it. Hey, I don't actually know how to do this. Do you have any great ideas? It turns out you'll get an answer. And to your point, like within a domain that you understand is a little different from a totally new domain, because you bring the vocabulary, the language to ask appropriately framed questions, right? Like, this is a domain that I understand really well. Tell me how I would do this particular thing is different from like, I don't know, I try to pick a domain that I don't understand very well. It doesn't matter because no one knows what I understand. But like, teach me all about this, right? And all about that might be filled with some, not perfectly accurate things. And that's your whole foundation of knowledge. So, check the results, but certainly the like ability to accelerate, right? I'm bringing Swift is a great example, right? Here's a programming language that I'm not familiar with and a framework that I'm not familiar with, but I'm creative and can build a thing. I just need the help and the guidance to get through the kind of mechanics of building that thing, right?
Yeah, and like one of the things I wish it existed was when I was trying to learn how to do vector images and stuff, because I just could not understand it, because I came from a world of digital design that was more pixel-based. So you would draw actual pixels, and then trying to get into, okay, well, now this is all math-based. I don't know. I really struggled with that. But being able to be like, hey, ChatGPT, what are the major things that I need to know if I'm moving from this to that? And, it will be nice in the future when you can actually trust all the results that come out of it. I think it can be quite transformational for research if we, fix the whole hallucination problem and don't just train on random opinions on the internet. But yeah, so it can be really useful tool. We're just not quite there yet as a something that can point you into, now you have new knowledge and can go perfectly into that new domain. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, huge accelerant in many different ways. Just don't expect all the answers. Like, and to me, we've been talking about creativity this whole time. Like, that's the fun, right? You can bring the creative part, but get past a lot of the mechanics and get some fresh ideas and then combine those ideas, right? When you talk about connecting things, oh yeah, I didn't know about that, but if I bring that thing into my world and add it to the things I do know, now I've got an even better idea and solution. All right. So one last sort of hard transition. We talked a little bit about this at LDX3, but we can go a little bit deeper because we have some time. How did you first know that you were an engineer? What was and it may be retroactive, right? Like you look back on sort of patterns of behavior and whatever, but was there a point, and when was that point where you're like, yes, this is me. This is how I see the world.
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't have a computer in my home growing up. I had to go to my friends' houses to get on internet. And back then it was 2400 baud modem that took like 30 minutes to dial up. And then you would talk to local people. So like that's my introduction to the internet roughly around 1994. And then I finished high school. I really liked math, but I didn't know what I'd want to do with it. I was also playing flute and stuff a lot of the time. So those were the two areas where I thought I might go into. But then I was in college and then needed to drop out for a while. But right before I did that, someone suggested, because I played Minesweeper quite well, that I'm an algorithmic thinker. So then I took a programming class because he was like, oh, well, you should take a programming class. I'm like, well, why not? I'm still searching. I don't know what I want to do. So then I ended up loving it and then dropped out, worked at several jobs, and then paid my way through school. So eventually I went back full time and finished my computer science degree within a year or two. But by that time, I knew that that's what I wanted to work on. So I had a lot of time to think and reflect on it. And it was just, I don't know, something about it was really fun to kind of bring almost math to life. And it just spoke to me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And then, well, I'm still here about 17 years later. So it's still quite, I think part of it though, now looking back on, also the conversation we're having here, is it that creativity that has kept me here? There's always something new to solve. It's always changing. I get bored quite easy. So there's all sorts of things to just keep me interested and motivated. And even when I focused on Android for like 10 years, there was still so many different types of applications that you could build with so many different features for so many different use cases that, it was interesting enough even to specialize somewhere for a long time. And now I've been widening that to AI and doing that for multiple businesses and helping them move from pretending it's not going to impact their business to actually doing something about it and preparing for the future.
Oh my goodness. What a description of the state of affairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're all being impacted one way or another. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I love that story. It's funny you mentioned that, like, I'm still here. Of course, that makes sense. And I thought maybe we should ask some of the people who left engineering, and maybe we'd get all the same, because I keep asking this question of so many different people, right? How did you know? And would we get different answers? You know what I mean? Like the people who were like, I thought that was for me, but actually it turns out it totally wasn't. But yeah, I love that. I mean, I love so many things about that story. I love the, like, I'm going to my neighbor's house or my friend's house because, like, that to me is some form of tenacity, right? Like, I really want,
True.
This is really interesting and it excites me. Also, I don't know the whole story, but I'll say there were things that I did as a kid where I had to go to my friends' houses. It was usually because my parents didn't want me to be doing that thing or whatever. But kids are kids. I have a couple, and that's what they do. So, although try to keep a kid off the internet in 2025, best of luck to you.
I think it'd be very different than when
exactly. They carry it around in their pocket, right? Anyway, yeah, I mean, just so many interesting parts about that, and I mean, I'm happy that you followed that path and that you got here. Oh, right. I know what I was thinking about in there was I took a break. I was unclear, but then coming back determined, like, okay, I figured it out. Like, now I know. It's actually like, we have such a linear view of so many things in our society, right? Like, you start at point A and you need to get to point B, and that's exactly what you do, right? And I think, I mean, speaking of, just to tie the whole thing back to creativity, right? Like, that's not how most things work. Like, things done really well are pretty non-linear. We try some things, they don't work. We go over here, we try those things. And then we sometimes tell the story afterwards in a very like, oh, I knew exactly what I was doing. And I got, I had this moment of inspiration, and then I had this brilliant idea, and then that was it. Right. And I think it's a disservice to everyone else to kind of frame the story that way, because it makes people uncomfortable with the fact that they're not sure, right? I don't really know if this is for me. I don't really know what I want to do when I get out of school. I don't really know if we're on the right path with this product. Like, that's life. And it is the exploration is fun, right? That's the creative work, is trying to find the bits that make sense and put them together and sort of figure out the path. I think that's what makes engineering fun. I think what makes starting a company fun, like so.
Well,
many
even
of these
now
things.
I'm trying to figure out what is next, right? So it's like, do I want to continue leading large organizations? Maybe because I like the impact of it, or do I want to become a coach and then then I can impact other people who are leading those organizations. So even today, I'm not 100% sure on exactly what I want to do. I think it's still tech adjacent, but
Yeah.
I think there's still more path to forge ahead.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Corey, for sharing all of this today. Super fun to catch up as always, and super inspiring. I mean, I think it's easy. I can only really speak for myself, but it's easy to start to feel like we just kind of like grind through the day every day. You know what I mean? And I think in this business, we're super fortunate to have all these opportunities to, to be creative, to think creatively, to solve interesting problems. And I, for one, am super thankful for it. And as I said, super inspiring to hear how you think about it. And I'm going to go do a lot of research on some of those coaching frameworks because they sound very valuable. So thanks to everyone else listening. And if you know someone who you want us to talk to, I guess find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get to me. And of course, if you enjoy the episode, subscribe on your podcast provider of choice. And thanks again for listening. And thank you, Corey, for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me.